The Reserve Bank review announced by Treasurer Chalmers today could transform the way interest rate moves are measured and announced to the community. And plenty of people have been talking about interest rates today, including the Governor of the RBA, Philip Lowe. Our business editor, Ross Greenwood, is with me now. Ross, there's politicking all around here. Talk us through it. It's obviously a delicate announcement being made here, the first review in a number of decades of the central bank. Talk us through the politics of it.
All right, so let's start with the Reserve Bank itself. It didn't believe a review was necessary. It was conducting its own internal review into its actions during the global financial crisis. It's put out some of those recommendations, including, of course, what it said was an embarrassing situation where it did say that interest rates were going to stay low until 2024. There was also the embarrassment of trying to defend the 3-year government bond rate, but having to abandon that, which led to a sharp increase in those money market interest rates and also led to significant losses, theoretical losses, of course, inside the bond portfolio at the Reserve Bank. But it goes much deeper than that. It goes to what are the real targets that the Reserve Bank should have? Should they be inflation targets, employment targets? What other targets should the Reserve Bank be looking at that would dictate where interest rates move? Now, Philip Lowe spoke today about some of this and especially about that inflation targeting. We know it's 2 to 3%. We know they can go higher or lower depending on circumstances at the time. But he seemed to be giving, if you like, this new committee that's doing the reviews some sort of a hint as to where he thinks it should end up.
In most other countries that have under-reviewed their inflation targeting arrangement, they've come to the conclusion that a flexible inflation target centred somewhere around the 2% mark is the best we can do. I don't want to prejudge the conclusions of the review, but I think that general conclusion that flexible medium-term inflation targeting is the right monetary policy framework, I think that's a pretty robust conclusion.
And Ross, what about rates specifically? The Governor had strong words that the rate increases still have a long way to run.
Well, he did indeed. And one point that he made, which was really unusual, because yesterday the Reserve Bank and its Deputy Governor said that they couldn't work out at this stage, because inflation is moving so fast, as to where a neutral level of interest rates is. Today, the Reserve Bank Governor indicated that he believes is around about 2%. They're still trying to work it out. He was more definitive. But then he also indicated that if that's the case, then it's likely that interest rates have a long way to run before they start to get to the point at where they're impacting Australian spending and indeed the inflation rate here in Australia. Have a listen.
I think in the next little while we're going to need to have further increases in interest rates. Now, a cash rate of 1.35% in an economy with inflation that's will soon be 6 and perhaps 7%, and with an unemployment rate of 3.5%. You know, we need higher interest rates. That level of interest rate is too low, and we're going through a process now of steadily increasing interest rates, and there's more of that to come. We've got to move away from these very low level of interest rates we had during the emergency. We took out a lot of insurance. We have to remove the insurance, and there's more work for us to do there. And we'll be guided by the outlook for inflation.
And Ross, the Prime Minister chimed in saying the RBA has made mistakes in the past, with a warning it should not repeat them by raising rates too high.
So there is the danger, isn't it? And this is where the politics comes into it. The Reserve Bank is independent. It makes its own decisions. But what is quite clear is that this government believes that the Reserve Bank has made mistakes. Otherwise, there would be no review into the role of the Reserve Bank and its targets and its performance in the past. So the Prime Minister today spoke to Neil Mitchell on radio, 3RW in Melbourne, where he indicated that there have been mistakes made and he would prefer there not to be mistakes made in the future.
The Reserve Bank will make its decisions based upon their assessment of where the economy's at, but they need to be careful that they don't overreach as well. Of course, the Reserve Bank declared a while ago, and they've conceded the error, that interest rates would stay at the extraordinarily low levels where they were for a period of years up to 2024, and that hasn't been the case.
Effectively, what the Prime Minister's saying there, Kieran, is while the Reserve Bank was slow to recognise the impact of inflation and therefore slow to raise interest rates when they were needed, he worries that the Reserve Bank might be too slow to cut interest rates or indeed to stop the rate increases, and that could damage Australia's economy and indeed the employability of many Australians, and that is a big issue for Australia right now.
Ross, thanks. We'll check in with Business Now at 4:30 p.m.